Today, we talk about Nissan. Let's get right into it. As always, let's start things off by going over the numbers. So Nissan's sales figures in 2024 were down by about 2.8% in the US market. Now, this isn't a huge decline when you just look at the auto industry in general. However, in 2024, most automakers were up when it comes to volume, not down. So that is a bit of a downside for Nissan. Now, they did technically keep their overall revenue up. It was at $86 billion in 2024, which pretty much matches 2023 and is slightly up from 2022. And they also made a profit, roughly $1 billion, which isn't crazy for an automaker, but hey, a profit is a profit. Now, the only reason why Nissan was actually able to pull this off is because they decreased production by about 20% and they got rid of 9,000 jobs. So what this means is Nissan is in a situation where the only way they're able to keep things in that profitable range is if they produce fewer cars, meaning there's less demand for their product. And that also is an attempt to give them pricing power, similar to what Toyota has done, where they've decreased production to make it so they only sell things at MSRP. But anyways, also getting rid of the workforce, right? They're just scaling things back, and that is how they are able to maintain profitability, which is not all that good. Now, something else that I will bring up in this video, but we're not going to dive too deep into, is potential corruption within Nissan that is also currently an issue. You can read up on it. Some stuff happened with the CEO, now in jail, and they actually went through a period where I think they didn't have like a CEO for it's like 6 months or something last year, like a very, very long time period. But yeah, that definitely is going to cause issues, right? If the leadership in your company is not doing the right stuff, then that is going to also have some negative impact overall. But I actually don't think that in itself is like kind of like a proxy for what is actually going wrong with Nissan. And so let's now talk about why Nissan is struggling in the US market so much. So the first big problem that I see with Nissan is with their more affordable product. And let's actually just go up through the price range of what Nissan offers. And then also Infiniti, right? That is luxury Nissan. So sub $30,000, Nissan actually has some cars that they can sell you, like the Altima, right? If you get kind of more entry-level packages, Versa's a big one, and then the Sentra as well. Now, the biggest problem with these sub $30,000 cars is that none of them are offered with a hybrid powertrain. People that are buying affordable cars care about, sub $30,000 cars brand new, care about how much the car costs, obviously. That's why they're in that price range. Fuel economy of the car, and then reliability. Now, Nissan with their CVT cars doesn't have the best reputation when it comes to reliability. Even though they've improved things over the years, reputation, it's really hard to build that back. And then, yeah, they don't offer any hybrids. And so although their fuel economy is good, you can get a Corolla hybrid in that, sub $30,000 range. And you can even get a Prius hybrid, sub $30,000. And those are getting like 50 miles per gallon. And so not offering a hybrid is really hurting them. And then obviously the reputation. And I think this also extends into the sub $40,000 price point. Because again, if you look at Toyota and Honda, they both have the most popular size of SUV in this segment with a hybrid, the CR-V and the RAV4. Nissan has the Rogue, and they're going to have a Rogue hybrid soon, but they're really late to the game. Toyota has had a RAV4 hybrid for, it's been like a decade at this point. They've had a RAV4 hybrid out for a really long time, and Nissan is just now bringing out a Rogue hybrid. And so you'll notice this is kind of a theme with Nissan, where they just take a little bit too long to release product. But I think that's the biggest thing impacting is, again, still reputation, right? And the Rogue has got a 3-cylinder turbo with a CVT. I don't think people are really all that trusting of that powertrain. When you compare it to like a RAV4 that has a 4-cylinder and a 8-speed, or a hybrid with an eCVT, both of those powertrains are known to be very reliable powertrains. Now, if we jump up into the, let's just say sub $60,000 area, so 40 to 60 grand, you used to have the Nissan Titan, doesn't exist anymore. And so that's obviously going to take away the ability for Nissan to have some customers. They don't sell a full-size pickup truck in the US market. The full-size pickup truck market in the US is a very large market. So exiting that, yeah, you're going to lose customers. But if you look at the other cars, let's say like the Frontier, and then you have the Pathfinder, and then you kind of have some of the entry-level Infiniti cars. And I mean, I can just tell you guys the Infiniti brand right off the bat. Because Infiniti is just basically Nissan with some nicer materials, and they don't really have that much more performance or any extra performance for that matter, I think that's what hurts Infiniti the most. I think that Nissan's trying to do the Lexus thing where they offer slightly more premium product, but the reason why the Lexus thing works for Lexus so well is they have product that is really efficient, and then they have product that actually has really good performance. They have like an IS500 with a V8. There's nothing in Infiniti that is like that. I mean, they had the Red 400 Sport back. I mean, I shouldn't say back in the day because it's not that old at this point, right? You could have gotten one in the 2024 year. But the point that I'm trying to make here is they didn't have anything with like crazy performance. Like the IS500 is crazy because it has a 5-liter V8, whereas a twin turbo V6, I mean, that's kind of like a dime a dozen when it comes to performance luxury cars. So that's the biggest thing with our little Infiniti side quest, is that all of their SUVs and cars don't really have like crazy performance for the segments they compete within, and so people aren't really comparing to them anymore. There's some stuff they could definitely do, but going back to the Nissan side of things, the Pathfinder, I cannot figure this one out for the life of me. This is such a good car. It's got an NAV6. It's got good space. It looks a little bit funky with the headlights, but overall it's a pretty good looking car. They have an off-road version, the Rock Creek. I think that there's just a lot of saturation in that particular segment. There's so many 3-row SUVs that people just don't even think about the Pathfinder because there's so many other options, but it really is a great option. And then this also leads into the Frontier. I am shocked that the Frontier is not like completely sold out when you look at how much the Frontier costs, what it offers compared to the other midsize pickup trucks. Like, it has an NAV6. It's, body on frame. It's got old school hydraulic steering. It's got a lot of old school stuff that's very reliable, which you think midsize pickup truck buyers would want. But apparently that's just not the case. So these two, I actually don't have a great explanation for them other than the fact that I think that Nissan just has a reputational issue, and so people just don't want to buy it because they don't want to buy a Nissan. But if they went and actually drove those vehicles, they'd find that they're actually pretty nice. Now, once we get into the more expensive stuff, so with Nissan and Infiniti, well, I think the QX80 is easy to explain. People buy luxury cars for prestige, and because Infiniti has not really ever been able to build prestige here in the US market, people are not going to go and spend the money for a big fancy Infiniti. They're going to go get an Escalade because that has the name, right? Now, when it comes to the Nissan side of things with the Armada, this is a little bit more confusing, but if you look at the specs on the truck, I think that it's pretty self-explanatory. The Armada is smaller than a lot of the vehicles people are going to compare it to, like if you compare it to an Expedition or if you compare it to a Tahoe. It doesn't have a flat floor all the way across, it raises up, so it's just not as practical when it comes to the space. And then the newest Armada, right, has a new turbo V6. People are not sure if it's reliable. Again, Nissan has those reputation issues, and so people aren't sure if they want to spend, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 on a Nissan if they're not sure if that car is going to end up being reliable. So yeah, a big part of the situation does come down to product, even though Nissan has some really good product in my personal opinion, like the Frontier and the Pathfinder in these segments they compete within. But I think the thing that makes Nissan struggle the most more than anything else is they are just late to the game. Again, the hybrid situation is a perfect example. I'm gonna give you guys another example. So again, with the hybrid situation, Toyota's been doing it for like a decade in the RAV4, a decade plus, and Nissan's now just jumping on the bandwagon. So it's like, by the time they actually get this hybrid Rogue out, it's like everyone and their dog has a hybrid in that size category. And so there's no way to really capitalize on the market. And on top of that, they're probably going to have issues with the hybrid Rogue, right? You always, whenever you release a new powertrain, you've got to work stuff out. And it's like people that buy that type of car, they don't want to deal with that. They want something that's tried and true. So they're just going to continue to buy Toyotas, continue to buy Hondas, etc. So that's the first thing, is they wait way too long. And I think it makes sense as to why Nissan waits way too long. When you're a company that, if you study Nissan's history, when you're a company that's always struggling to stay afloat, you're not really going to want to take risks. You're only going to want to dive into things that you think are a guarantee. And when you do things that way, well, you're always going to be late to the game, so you're never going to be able to capitalize as much as other people can. Another great example with this is the Nissan Xterra. Everyone knows that Nissan should have a new Xterra in the US market. Body on frame off-road SUVs are the hottest thing right now. And Nissan doesn't have anything in that segment, right? They've got the Pathfinder Rock Creek, and then they've got the Armada, which has independent suspension, and it's just not really, I mean, they've got the Pro 4X, which is, it's off-road-ish, but like serious off-roaders, they're not gonna buy that type of vehicle, right? They're gonna buy something that has at least a solid rear axle. And so if Nissan does bring back the Xterra, it's probably gonna be a similar situation where it's like by the time they bring it back, I mean, it's already that situation. If they brought it back today, well, now we have so many SUVs from Toyota in that off-road segment, and then you've got Jeep, and then Ford came back, and then Land Rover, right? I understand the Defender's independent suspension, but still, Land Rover is now in this segment, and then you've got new companies like Ineos with the Grenadier, and so you can see that Nissan waiting, being conservative, right? Because they're just trying to stay afloat all the time, it ends up biting them in the butt, and then they end up kind of continuing the cycle where they just stay afloat. And so in conclusion, I would say that, yeah, poor leadership definitely derailed things for Nissan, but I'd say it's also, you know, some reputational problems with some of the stuff they've had over the years, like, you know, CVT issues and some of the issues with some of their powertrains. And then the fact that they're just always late to the game. And you put all that together, and it makes sense as to why Nissan is struggling. And so, you know, time will tell in terms of what will happen to Nissan in the future. But with the whole Honda merger thing not really working out, you know, I don't really know what is next for Nissan. And I think that we are, you know, this is kind of like a broader car industry thing. I think we're going to see a lot of mergers in the near future because we've seen such big shifts in the car industry over the last few years. These shifts are going to show vulnerabilities within certain car brands. And so it's like they had to fix those vulnerabilities or they've got to have someone else take over them. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts.